Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next of our webinar series. This one is Tips and Tricks Part 2. This is our 43rd straight webinar in the series. We're scheduled on all of your schedules to be just through the end of August, but probably later today I'm going to go ahead and bump that up. You'll get an email that'll push this through the end of September. So thank you all for coming. It's been wildly successful. A lot of work for everybody, but it's been wildly successful, and it's certainly something that we want to continue to do. So keep that in mind. Been enjoying it very much. The today's topic is Tips and Tricks Part 2. What we did last week was we had a vote with the people that were here live, and we asked you make the call. You let us know, and we gave 8 or 9 different things, and a few more tips and tricks inside of Race Studio 2 analysis is what won the vote. So here we are. Second place in that, as I mentioned during that time, was suspension analysis. We've been getting a little bit of desire to have that off and on, and it's been rising. So because it was so close, it literally was only 1 or 2 votes off of being number 1 that we have put that into the schedule. It will be the very next available date. I think as of right now, that'll be Thursday, September 3rd. So if suspension analysis was one of your big picks, you might want to write that down and keep that in mind. So we'll be doing that one soon. So perfect. I again appreciate everybody being here. The question and answer, we're gonna talk a little bit about the agenda, some of the the 6 or so topics that I'm going to go over, and then we'll throw some more into the question and answer if there's an area that you think is kind of cool, or you think is you have a couple of questions on. Maybe put them in there. Maybe we'll get to them. We can't do anything that's super complex or something maybe on the fly. But if there's something you might want to chat about, make sure you put it in there. So let's do a little bit of a quick introduction for me. We always ask our co-hosts, I've been at all of these, but co-hosts, I always have a slide that they can chat a little bit about themselves, and I have used this one in the past, but just a little bit about me. I've been around motorsports most of my life, probably since I was like 14 as part of a family. My dad really enjoyed motorsports stuff. He did some drag racing and some a little bit of circle track stuff back in Southern California, in the Torrance area where he grew up, car clubs, and then we moved up here to where I have lived most of my life, up in Washington State, south of Seattle, quite a bit, and these are all the off-road cars are what I did for the most part for about 20 years straight. Raced off-road all over North America, Mexico, Baja type races, Baja 500, San Felipe, a lot of short course stuff, Mickey Thompson Entertainment Group Stadium type stuff. The picture in the upper left-hand corner is at Prairie City outside of Sacramento. Yeah, some short course series there with the Vora series. I did a little bit of circle track racing. That yellow and black Rabbit was just some circle track stuff. That was kind of fun. I wasn't very good at it, but I did enjoy it. My friend Ron Hart there owned the car and asked me to race it. The off-road car, somebody said maybe what kind of car. I'm in the one that's in the closer one, the 2-seat one. I'm driving it there, and that was a 1600 car, although I raced a lot of open class cars and some other things as well. The Jim Moulton built that car. Lower left-hand corner, my son came into it. We got into go-karts to begin with, and then moved along, and he wanted to continue racing and some other stuff, maybe some sports cars. We purchased a Spec Miata back in 2005, and in 2006 won the SCCA runoffs at Topeka. That's me riding in the passenger seat, feeling like I'm about to die, and as for the cool down lap, quite an honor to be able to win the runoffs in such a. It was the first year it was a national class. I think there was 62 or 64 entries or something like that at that race. So that was pretty fun. And then he went on to get into MX5 Cup and Mustang Challenge and won in a lot of those things. Did some Grand Am things. Got to race at Daytona, and then into off-road racing back like I had been and drove for Mopar and Traxxas and Pro Light and some Pro 2 stuff as well. So all pretty good stuff. And what what this has been for me has been a way for me to learn about data. You know, when we got into data when AIM first came out with the microns in karting, and then I've learned a lot about it, and mainly pushed because of my son's career in motorsports. As he was getting better and better, data continued to grow, and then and I continue to get deeper and deeper into it, and because of that, a lot of my experience and a lot of stuff we're going to talk about, we have talked about in these webinars and in the seminars that I give on site, and what we're going to talk a little bit about today is based on knowledge and experience of actually using the stuff, right? So and working it as hard as we could to get as much speed out of the car and out of him as we possibly could, and then of course onto customers and other users. So that's a little bit about me, and the lower right corner is just a picture of one of our seminars that we've done in years past. So the agenda for today. So that's a little bit about me, but thank you all for coming. I do appreciate it. We've been having a great time, and I'm certainly happy that you're here. And we'll talk about what our next webinar is at the end of this one, of course, as usual, and I think you'll be excited about that one as well. Tips and tricks, part 2. We've done a tips and tricks early, and then I've got lots of feedback from folks of, hey, you know what, so, Todd, you did notice me, I do see you. Talked about some of the different tips and tricks and some things that people have asked me about in the last few months. Huge spike in questions about analysis and things since we've been doing these webinars, which is just a great thing. Everybody's really learning a lot of stuff. And so one of the things that I want to talk about, I want to adjust your data in RayStudio to analysis. Let's say my example is going to be you brought in some data. Maybe it's a throttle position sensor or a brake pressure, and darned if the sensors weren't calibrated when they came in quite correctly. And you don't have to live with that. There's ways to adjust that. Let's say you're starting at 10% on your throttle when you're totally off of it, and it only goes to 90. If we've written a lot of math channels, as you have seen over the course of the last couple of months, sometimes we gate those, or the if statements we use are based on, boy, if the throttle is greater than X, right? And if your throttle is going up there and flatlining across the top, but it's at a false high, it truly should be 100%, your math channels may not work correctly. So you may want to be able to adjust these and not have to just adjust the math channels down, right? So some things like that. Let's adjust some data in RayStudio. Channel tags. I want to talk a little bit about the channel tags that are in there. What power those channel tags have that you may not be using quite to its fullest. I've got this average is one of the ways that I use them a lot, and then not zero. I want to talk about the whole average but not zero concept, and it's in channel tags, it's in the channel report. I want to talk a little bit about that and how that is powerful and what that can do for you. A lot of people don't use that as to its fullest extent. The other thing we want to talk about, we talk about it a lot individually, is when you create a track map for the segments, for the little color bar that's across the top up here. I get that question a lot, is how do you pick those? How do you pick them, and how do you get them at the right spot for what you're after? And so I'm gonna do want to talk about that a little bit, and just maybe not build a complete map or anything, but just show you some of the basics of ways to do that might help you a little bit and get those splits exactly where you want them. Channels report, segments and export. A couple things in channels report that I don't think we've talked about much, and there's some real power there that we can talk about. The segments themselves and how to get the highest speed in just a segment, not overall for an entire lot, but the highest segment speed in each, highest speed in each segment, or highest average, or the highest average, not zero. Yeah, and then export that out to an Excel spreadsheet. That's another thing that I've gotten questions on probably the last 3 or 4 weeks of exporting different things, and channel reports being one of those. So we'll talk about that real quickly. Light and dark plots. I have on purpose switched around for some of our data in these presentations to be sometimes a dark background, sometimes a white background, just so everybody, and we've actually chatted about a little bit about how to do it. So we'll quickly show you how to do it again today, but I want to dig deeper into specific colors of specific things. So we will get a shot on that and see how that works out. About specific colors. Maybe one of the ones that I do a lot, I change a lot, is the color of the actual cursor. And so we'll take a look at how that works. I'm seeing in the chat that there's a Q&A won't let me submit. I know that when I turned mine on, it did some things it normally didn't do. So if it's not quite right and it's not working for you, go ahead and try to put them into the chat, and maybe the guys in the chat can get the information to me in a private chat, so somehow it stands out. But either way, if it's not working for you on the Q&A, write them into the chat if you can. And then the last one is snap versus GPS lap insert. This has been a question any number of times about when do I use snap, when do I use GPS lap insert. I'm going to show you a couple of things. I used one as an example here, which we will talk about later. Here's the start line of some older, poor quality GPS. Gosh, this was probably back in 2005, 2006, something like that. And this is the start finish line right here in the GPS map. And you notice that the lines do not line up really good. It rarely happens anymore, but if some of you are still using maybe the older Solo, the original Solos, or maybe an MXL with an old GPS and maybe the receiver's not in a great spot, you'll see this occasionally. I just want to talk about it, zoom in, show you kind of what it looks like, and then give you a couple of fixes for it. Something that I always do when I see this, and how to fix it real quickly for you, and I think you'll enjoy that as well. And of course, we'll continue to look over here, and as we go a little deeper, I'll try to catch up with some of your questions and see if there's something there. So that's where we're going to go. Well, let's see how it all happens. We won't spend a ton of time. I'm not going to. We're going to dig into the issue, but I'm just going to give you a couple of examples and then move on, instead of taking it, building a complete track map or something, right? We're just going to give you some ideas, and we'll go from there. Okay, so here we're going to jump into Live Race Studio. There's a new share. Grab some data. The data that I'm going to use is some data from Ray Phillips, used in his latest webinar. So if it's data that you would like to play with, go ahead and go back to one of his, or give me a holler and I can give you a link. Email will be at the end. Couple little things that I'd like to just show you. And again, I'll kind of go off tangent a little bit every once in a while, because the way I've planned it out, just to make it kind of work for you. The first one being one of those. Here we are looking at its VIR data. It's some of the data, like I mentioned, that Ray Phillips used. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is there's the throttle position sensor from this data, straight from the ECU protocol. When it gets into our hands, if you look at it, you can see that the bottom is not quite the bottom. If I zoom in on that, you can kind of see that the bottom is like 9%. And the top is like 98, maybe 90, 97, somewhere in there. It's not quite exact, right? And some people would like to be able to adjust that. If this is okay with you, you're moving on, right? So it's not a big deal. I see a couple more questions have popped into the Q&A. Maybe it's something that's fixed itself. So give it a shot if you haven't. But here's the first one I want to show you. Is sometimes we get data from an ECU and it's at 98% right where I'm sitting, right? And maybe, and this may not be the perfect example, but you'll get the goal, what we're after. Maybe it's not to the 10th of a decimal place, to the right. It's not quite as precise as you'd like to see it. Not always, but sometimes that data is there, but we're just not showing it to you. So here's a couple little tricks. If you right click on the channel name itself, sometimes I'll just pick a different one, like GPS speed. You notice that right here in the middle, your decimal figures are active, and I could come in and I could turn that in, show two places out to the right of the decimal. Okay. Depending on the hardware, the ECU protocol, and any number of things, this can be different for different channels. So I'm going to leave the GPS speed at 1, because that's kind of what I do, like 86.9 where we're at. That's fine. When I go back to throttle, let's apply that. When I go back to throttle, I don't have that option. You see that? since I don't have that option, there is one other kind of cool thing that I had to do a lot in the past, and it still is active for some channels that works pretty cool. If you take that channel, FF underbar throttle, I'm gonna go ahead and exit out, and if you build a math channel, and what I've done is I built this new FF underbar throttle, and I put this, the same scalings and all that stuff, and in this case, I'm just telling it decimal figures 3, but you could, let's make it at 3. You could put it at 2 or 1 if that's what you're after. And the formula for it is simply just the channel. And again, this doesn't always work. It all depends on how much of that background information has been saved in the original throttle position sensor data. But put it in there and try it. And when I click on OK, and then I had already built it, but this new FF throttle is now sitting here. And you can see that it's 98% on the original one, and it's 98.039. Of course, we could then obviously always come in and change that maybe down to only a single decimal place if we wanted to see that. And now we've got that tenth of a percent that you might want on this, or shock pots, or oil pressure or fuel pressure. Sometimes you want that, and we're not showing it. A cool little trick for you that you can sometimes, if you just make a math channel out of something and just use it, you get the full amount of granularity of the channel in the math channel that's available for you. Just a kind of a cool little thing. Okay. The next thing I want to do, back to now where that throttle position sensor is maybe not adjusted to be 0 to 100, which if you do a lot of math channels, sometimes you really want that to be as close to that as possible. So let's look at the throttle. I'm about to come out to an entire lap. You can kind of see here that it's 99. It's not terrible, but certainly at the bottom though, it's not getting all the way down to 0 when the driver's off. Couple ways to know for sure you're at 0. Maybe the driver's riding his foot on the throttle because it's a race lap, right? Use all the tools that are available to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and turn on the snap mode and the time mode. I've now changed its time, and I've put it to snap mode so I can move this data around anywhere I want. Snap mode meaning, we've done an entire webinar on this, but the snap function is no longer snapping to one lap, right? It allows me to take that chunk of data and put it anywhere we want, and you can see where the start finish line happens to be here at VIR. I'm going to take that data all the way down here to when the driver was sitting on pit lane before he left. And you can see here, the driver's off the throttle, it's sitting there idling. If we were to turn the RPM on, you could see the RPM is sitting here at 985 or so, just sitting there idling. There is our true bottom of our throttle position as we sit here. How do I now bring that and put that to 0? That's the question, right? So the way you do it is if you go to the channel itself and you right click. As soon as I right click, that's that box we looked at a minute ago looking for decimal figures has this little area over here. We have briefly talked about this in previous webinars, but we have this little dialog box with the A and the B box. The A is a scale to that data that you have, and the B is a shift. In this case, I want to shift that down, and B being the shift. It's the plus B up as part of the formula. So in this case, I want to go minus 9. It's sitting here at 9%, right? So I'm gonna just apply an exit. Boom. We now have just adjusted that throttle down to being at 0%. Okay, pretty cool, pretty easy. Keep in mind that that's just for this test. It will hold. If you close this test, come back in a week, it will still be at 0, but it's only this test. So this little trick really is something that needs to be fixed if you really want to not have to do it every time. You do it in the protocols or in other ways, calibrate the sensor correctly, whatever. But now I'm going to jump in, go back to the data, a main lap, right? I'm going to turn off my snap and time. Now I've got this full throttle run up the back straightaway at VIR, and I want to know what the average throttle position is there, so that I can add a scale factor to get that to be up at 100%, where we keep the bottom at 0. So what I do is I zoom in, just zoom in. I'm gonna not zoom in perfectly the first time. I like to take a couple shots at this to make it even more accurate. So here's a shift where the driver's lifted, and then I've got this whole area here. I want to know what the average of that full throttle was. So I'm going to go one more time, and I'm going to go just after he comes up off the throttle, just to make this a little more accurate, to about there. Could have done that in one, but I find doing it that second time is a little bit more accurate. Okay, I still don't have any information, right? It still just says I'm at 90%. If you click on the channel tag, or you have your channel tags always turned on where you're seeing these triangles, I have mine turned on. I have my min-max visual turned on to on selected, so I don't have those triangles all the time. If you had them always, which is by default, you would have seen these triangles already, right? And then I can look at this, and 89 is the smallest, the lowest point, 90 being the highest value, and 90 is the sideways triangle. That's telling me the average of the view that I'm looking at. So it's 90. If I scale, what kind of a scale factor do I need to apply to 90 to bring everything up 10% to 100? Is 1.10, right? So let's go back into our throttle. And instead of everything being multiplied by 1, let's do everything multiplied by 10. 10%, and then apply an exit. And now we've got, and sometimes it ends up being a little bit of an iterative process, right? So I see that it's 99 now in this overall. Yeah, okay, let's bump that up maybe just a tick more. So let's go back in, and instead of 110, 11, right? Another 1%, and apply an exit. And now my average when he's full throttle is at 100%. If I zoom back out, now you're looking at your happens to be a throttle position sensor, but 0 is down here at 0, and 100% is up here at about 100%. And now we get the process of being able to trust or use in math channels our newly calibrated post-session throttle position sensor. Okay, kind of cool. Keep that in mind, and use that in anytime you need to change something. I'm going to turn that one off, and we'll do it one more time. That one used it was important to be able to bring it down to zero it out and then scale it up. We used both pieces of that, the A and the B box, right? Let's look at the the brake pressure on this particular car, and in its raw state. And here we are, and it's at about -7 psi and 13 on the rear. It kind of, just as, maybe we look in this same area. So let's zoom in on that same area. This time I'll try to get it right the first time as I do it right there. -5 on the front, so it needs to be bumped up 5, and 13 needs to be brought down 13 in order to kind of zero out the brake pressures post-session. Let's go to the front, right-click on it. I'm on my front. It always opens up to the one that's there. There's other ways to get to this box, but I do it by clicking here, right-click here. It automatically selects the right channel. So if I move that out of the way, because I have no memory, -5 on the front. So you do the opposite in the B box for the shift. So I'm just going to put a 5, and I'm going to apply it. And you'll see that it now has gone down to 0. And on the rears, I'm going to select it, and I want to bring that up down 13. So -13 in the B box, -13. I'm just going to apply an exit. And now all of a sudden we can see that our average brake pressure down here is both now zeros. And if we back out, you can see that we've basically calibrated our brakes and our throttle at this point. Pretty cool, a pretty cool thing of being able to post change those any sensor values you might have. Funny story, just for fun, if you race in a spec class, which we did a lot, that spec Miata that you've seen in the opening things, everybody always thinks you're cheating at some level, and maybe you come into your RPM, everybody knows that it's got a hard limiter at 6,500 or 6,600 in this case, maybe. Kind of a fun little thing you can do before you share a screen capture of some of your data. You can just come in here and maybe add 800 to the RPM. And now all of a sudden, if you're playing around with your buddies, you can kind of fake them into thinking that your rev limiter isn't working. Maybe is working really good. Maybe just some thoughts. You can play around if you'd like to. So that was the first one. The second one, and I kind of talked about it a little bit, was channel tags average. We looked at that by zooming in here. We got that this 0 is average, but the kind of the cool part about it is that average number is whatever is in view in your measures graph. So now your maybe a throttle position to be a better one to do it on, is you're racing along, and one of the factors that people like to look at if the car is getting better and you're working along. Yeah, that'll make the mechanic laugh. Exactly, Eric. You're jumping along and you want to know average throttle position for an entire lap. It's one of those things that drivers, crew, engineers, they look at, and boy, if your average throttle position comes up, boy, that's the driver's more comfortable, able to get to the throttle quicker and earlier, that kind of a thing, right? So boy, bring up your throttle. You don't have to go to a channel report. You don't have to go to a histogram. A very quick way is just to look at this average right here. This particular lap, the driver was on throttle, average of was 65%. If I grab another lap, there was 64 on that lap. And if I just drag this along, it was 70, 74, 70, 59, and then on his final lap, 73. Another reason I like to use this bar down below, the test laps toolbar, is I like to just grab that with my mouse, and now my eyes are focusing just right here. So I'm quickly dragging this along and just getting the average throttle position for all of the different laps. There's the out lap, right, 46%. And then after the green, you can just drag this along really quickly. Another reason I use the test laps toolbar, I leave that on instead of getting it out of the way, which a lot of people do like to see. Okay, so that's the channel tags, turning them on and off. Let me do it one more time. The way I like to do it is you little wrench, I turn it to on selected so it doesn't take as much screen space, and then I do apply an exit, and now you're just getting the channel tag with wherever the value of the cursor is. And if I want those additional little triangles, min max visuals, just click on the name and you get the minimum, the maximum, the average for that channel, and it bolds it. And the reason the bold becomes important is if I had multiple laps, and it's kind of a double stage here. Let me turn per lap color on. And I'm trying to figure out, maybe I can't see really good about exactly which lap was faster in an area. Boy, if I click on this, that lap becomes bolded, and you can pick up that first lap, that red lap that was the 204 was the better lap. It makes it stand out, and I can come up, down. There's my throttle for that lap. As soon as I click on it, it bolds it, and that helps find some of the channels a little bit. So it's kind of a handy little tool on top of being able to keep the screen clean where I can see everything. Okay, just a little bit about that, which is kind of nice. Okay, the other one that I'd like to talk about is let's say it's a channel that let me turn off a couple of these. Maybe as part of Ray's presentation he did the other day, he talked about acceleration on the back straightaway, and there's an area here that was just the acceleration on the he called it VIR BS acceleration 1. It's acceleration just on the back straight of VIR. But there's a bunch of zeros here because of a math channel that he had built that said if you're outside of this gated area, this spot on the rear straightaway, as far as your placement of the car on the track or ahead of it, if you're outside of that, all the values go to 0. The trouble with that then is, as soon as I click and use my normal way of doing this, by just clicking on this, it's telling me my high and low values, but it's averaging. That average value is average of everything I'm looking at, and it includes zeros are being averaged as zeros, even though he was trying to null or just get that data out of the way, right? So this tool, it can be super helpful, but it can also be a little bit false, I guess, in a channel where you have filtered out information and by putting it down to a 0. A couple ways of fixing this, right? You can come in and we can zoom in. Let me get rid of a couple of the laps just to make it so it's a little bit easier to see. So here's this data. We can zoom in. I like to zoom in fairly close and then do it one more time, so I can actually hit it right where I want. I want to right where it starts, and right where it starts, the math channel starts to end. And now if I do this, it's 0.07. is the average of his acceleration in this area itself. Now that's a true number, right? Where if I backed out just a little bit, you'll see that it's 0.03. It's because it's averaging this 0. So you got to be kind of a little bit careful. Understand that that is average of whatever's in the screen, not necessarily zeros or not nulls. Okay. But there's there's maybe another way of doing that. You noticed when I clicked on this box here, we do have our delta channel, which is the little red triangle, and we get some additional values when we use the delta, and I'll show it in a second. We can have that nothing, just the time and distance on the delta, or we can have the slope of the line, the rate of the line, the slope of the line, or we can average of everything that's in there, or we can do average not 0. And so I'm going to turn that on to average not 0. So in other words, if there's a 0 value that it's seeing, it considers it to be null. It doesn't use it in the math. So it's kind of interesting. So now if I apply and exit that, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit to make it a little bit easier for everybody to see. There's the acceleration rate, and if I do my delta, and I do the delta from here to here, right? And maybe just a little bit more, something like this. It's giving me, I could stretch it out, quite a ways, and you see that the 0.7 is still there. That's average of everything between this and this, the two dots, the 2 clicks I made with the delta. It's giving me that 0.07 that we know that it is, but since I'm zoomed out, my normal averaging is 0.02. So that ability to be able to come in with the delta function and get the average without having to worry about clicking it at the start. Let me turn it off. To turn it back on, let's just click here at the end. It's still 0.07 because all of the zeros that are in this area, it considers them to be null. They're not part of the math. The math starts as soon as it pops up off of 0, and over here where it goes back down to 0, it doesn't worry about those. Okay. The delta function gives you a cool new little way of looking at the 0 values or the null values compared to even the little triangles here on the min-max visual. Kind of a cool little thing. Okay, let's turn that back off. Track map generate. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this, but I do want to just give you some ideas of things that I do, right? And let's say that we want to build a new map. What I tend to do is I tend to bring up 3 or 4 laps. One of the things a lot of people get frustrated with is maybe they're looking at some data. I want to find a lap. That one green one is there. We go. It's a little bit closer. They want to have their segments be as close to maybe a braking zone, but not where one lap you were on one side of the braking zone, the other was on the other, and it makes your split reports be really odd if you do it that way. If you were to put this split right, like right in here, let me zoom in a little bit, pull that over just a tick. If you were to put your split right there, 3 of these laps you're still on the throttle. On one of the laps you're on the brake already, right? So one of the ways that I like to do this is bring up several laps, go back to where you know it's a good solid spot where you have all the way up the straightaway to a point, but before where you're starting to brake, and then look up here in the upper right hand corner, and that's at 710 feet, right? So jot that down. Maybe that'll be the end of our front straightaway split is 710. I'll zoom out just a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And maybe you want to have, zoom in a little bit, we can see it. And maybe you want this acceleration zone to be the beginning of it be a split, but you're not too sure where in the corner you want to do it. If you do it here, several of them have some lifts, several of them, maybe you rolled through there in a different way. What I like to do is put the cursor up here where everybody is on the throttle. Sometimes even I bring it up where where I bring up lateral G's as well. And I try to maybe bring it down here. This is a bad example because it went right from right to left, right? But maybe you do it where the driver has opened his hands coming off of a corner. And but in this case, I want to do it right here where the acceleration, all the 4 laps I've looked at are acceleration. Look up here, 1796. Okay, jotting these down as I go. Maybe I want this to be a 100% acceleration zone here. So I bring the cursor back, find that spot on average. I know I'm accelerating all the way, 2426. And I'm just jotting these down on a piece of paper here. Uh, I'm not going to go all the way through it, but you see where we're heading. Maybe this would be this whole area you want to be one of them. You want to wait till you come off, you know, you've double apexed right here. It looks like this driver did, and then as he's starting to straighten out and everything is starting to come together, maybe we start the back, you know, the uphill S's here at VIR at 45:14. Okay, that's enough for now. And now I go build a map. I will map new. And what I do is maybe you want to rotate it a little bit, make the map look like how you wish it to look. Sometimes VIR works kind of good this way, but do it however you wish. And remove all of the segments that the AIM software has just done for you. Okay, boom, we have no segments now. What I do is I now look at my list, and I look down, and it's 710 was the first one we did. You can come in here into the distance, 710, move to, and divide. Okay, and then the next one, 1796, move to, and divide. And you might want to come in and recolor these at, you know, and make it a straightaway and make this one a braking zone. And then the next one, 2426 was what I had wrote down. 2426. Oops, 2426. And move to there and divide. And maybe recolor that one as a different color, maybe blue, maybe green. It's an acceleration zone. And then the last one we actually checked was 45:14. And move to that one and divide, and maybe we leave that, maybe we change that color to blue just to cycle through the colors, and then so forth. And you would have walked your way around, and you would have hand determined all of these. You can kind of get close to that by looking at this, you know, the G's and the speed trace up here. You can kind of get close to where we were talking, but you don't have as many laps. You only got your best lap, or the one you've selected over here at least. And you can't see a bunch of laps. That's why I like to do is stack a bunch of my laps and then split them. And in this case, I'm just going to call it 43, it's a seminar number, and then VIR. And let's save that, and it'll apply. And now all of a sudden you can see, oops, we can see where those splits are ending up now, and they're ending up right where we expected them. And our segment reports now will be much more accurate to what we're after, as far as not having those crisscross over on your segment reports. Okay. That track map generate thing will pay dividends to you. I tend to go, and certainly a certain kind of car, I might build 3 or 4 maps right when I get some data right off the bat, and maybe I build a braking map, an acceleration map, a segment map where we got the, you know, the 4 or 5 main segments, the way you drive it, build that, and then I just apply those maps the rest of the weekend, and don't build new maps all the time. I try to build them, you know, ahead of time as best as possible. So track maps and generating them. There's a couple of tips for you. The next one I wanted to talk about a little bit is channel reports. Channel reports is something I've gotten some questions on recently, and kind of some cool things. Let's say, and this is a good example, we've got a channel report where I've got just speed based on every lap, a min, average, and max, but these are just the values of the minimum, average, and max for the entire lap, right? Same with the VIR back straight acceleration. This one, though, I added another value that make sure, I just want you to know that it's there. I've got the average. This is doing just like what we've seen earlier. It's averaging the entire lap of acceleration, even though we have filtered out everything except for that one little chunk of data on the back straightaway. That's why these numbers are falsely low. But the average not zero is exactly what we were seeing when we used, when we zoomed all the way in and we were actually looking at them, or used the average not zero function in the delta function. So when you add and remove, you may or may not know, but when you come in here and you find VIR back straight Excel 1, which I think was down here, back extra 1, you have all of these available report objects. What I've brought over is you have this one average in there. It's been in the software for a while, but wasn't there for a long time ago. But average, if not zero, is in your list of things you can do in your channels report. And now you can put that over here. Let just cancel out. And now, boy, that is a very, very powerful tool if you're using the if functions and building some filtering mechanisms, and you want some averaging of some math channels that you've done that you have zeroed out a lot of data, and you're trying just to zoom in. That is a very, very powerful tool. Keep that in mind. Okay. Can the order of the channels be displayed? Can the order of the channels displayed be changed? Yes and no, right? It depends on the area. David Arkin asked that question. The channels here, of course, can be changed. Sort channels, come in, we change the channels, right? I think we've all talked about that. Where it's a little bit frustrating is the channels being changed doesn't always hold true for everywhere. Let's say the math channels. If I come into the math channels, these are identifiers, which are basically the channels. These don't always get changed with the math channel order change over here. So keep that in mind. It's a little bit frustrating that doesn't, when I change them here, in my opinion, I would love it to be changed in all these other different areas. Not there. So you don't get it there. The same thing is maybe in the, oops, let's, boom, channel reports. See, the other areas where you go to try to add and remove, this order of these channels does not always match, typically does not match the sorted channels over here. So David, you're right. It's just kind of a tough thing. We can get them to change where you use it most of the time, but the other 5 or 10% you're looking at the channel order, it does not change with that. Okay. So that's the channel report as far as getting that kind of cool value of not 0, right? Here's the next thing that a lot of people don't know. This is one that I was kind of excited to share. Is you can get not only the time of each lap and the distance of each lap, but in the settings for the channel report, we can break it down and we can tell it that we want to look at, splits of these values by the splits, right? So you can split the group by the same lap, or you can split this group by the split number. My favorite is by the split number. I'm just going to apply and exit that. And what you can do, and I'll show you the other way as well. Now, all of a sudden with that one setting, and I'll come back up and show it to you again, here is your normal split report we're all kind of used to. It's the min, average, max, because that's the way I've set it up, of the GPS speed, let's say. And but now down here for split 1, and if I bring up the track map, make that a little bit smaller so we're not covering everything, and then bring this back to the front. Let's get rid of that so we can all see it real easily. Let's see if I can even get the split numbers to pop up. There we go. So we've got this little piece right here. This green little piece here was from the start line to the beginning of the first segment. That's what we call split 1 over here. Now, all of a sudden, all the laps that I have turned on, I've got 4 laps active, so those are the only ones I'm seeing. It doesn't do it for every lap. It does it for only the laps you have open. The lap 4, 6, 8, and 9, 4, 6, 8, and 9 down here is one that I have active. It tells you how much time you were actually in that split from the start finish line to the first segment, right? So that's what we call split 1. That you were actually in it for 3.8, kind of like your split report, but here in the channel report, tells you how much time you were in that. The bold one is always your best lap, just the way that it works. And then it also gives you the minimum, average, and maximum speed just in that segment. Very, very powerful. If you start to think about this and some of the stuff that you might be able to do with this, it's kind of interesting. Now let's go down to the red segment, which is what we call split 2. Here we are. The min speed was around this, the braking zone until the driver would start to get back after it, depending on how you build your map, right? Now all of a sudden the min speeds, the average speed, and the max speed inside of just this one segment, and so forth, right? There is a bit of a flaw here that I think is, it is what it is. I just want you to understand it. You notice that the distance is the same for each of the different laps. The software is not quite taking your exact travel distance like it does up here, where full rollout distance, it varies on each lap. Here it's just telling us how long that segment was. So the difference in the driving maybe through the corner isn't showing here. Just full disclosure, just so you don't start leaning on that and think that the driver would drove the exact same number all of the time. So I thought you might want to just see that and understand it. Okay. But it's really a cool way of coming in here and being able to break it down by your splits and see the averages and the low water temperatures and high oil pressure, whatever it is that you're after, right? Let's go back in and let's make a tweak to this just so you see the difference. Instead of being by the split number, by each of the different splits, we can split it by the same lap and apply an exit there. And this does a little bit different. I'm going to get rid of the map just so you can see it a little bit better. This one does it a little bit different. It takes all of lap, it takes lap 4 now, this lap here, and it breaks it down by each of the different splits. So now the split 1, you spent 3.8 seconds in it. It was 709 feet, close. And it tells you what your average min max speed was. Here's split 2 for lap 4, and it tells you what your speeds or whatever other channels you have set up in your channel report. It tells you how much time you spent in it, and then each lap is split apart, the best lap being bold. Okay, so there's two different ways you might want to see it. It gives you the option of doing that. Those 2 buttons right there, I find a lot of people don't know about them, and there is some pretty cool little power here in the view map split. There's some other sections here that you can do. One of the ones I do use occasionally is I like to turn on the statistics. So I'm going to go ahead and just do that one just for fun. And now we can see the statistical analysis stuff. And if I change that back to each individual one, boom, boom, apply an exit. Now we get our statistical information, min, max, standard deviation for each split for each lap. So if you're a fan of those numbers, those are you can get those right in the report. Okay. And finally, something that a lot of people do and that I just wanted to chat about is actually exporting this out. In a lot of functions inside of Race Studio, you have this little Excel icon. You can come in and create an Excel spreadsheet. And I'm not going to, we could just create it and save it out. And it has now created a spreadsheet. You could go open it up, and it just takes each one of these little boxes is in its own cell, rows and columns, just like you see it here. And now you can parse that data and take it to other places out of a channel report. That's there's a lot of that in lots of different functions inside of AIM. That little icon is there a lot. The overall exporting of data will be over here, but in individual functions, sometimes you'll see it up here as well. So pretty cool channels report, a little bit more tips and tricks in the channel report for you. Okay, I'm gonna close that down. I'm gonna bring the measures and laps toolbar back up. Let's get rid of a couple of laps just so we don't have be too crazy while we're looking at stuff, and zoom the rest of the way back out. The next one we have talked about in the past. I'm going to change that color just because I think it's going to, we'll leave it, cancel it. We have talked about the ability to change from a dark background, like right here, where if you're out in the sun underneath a colored easy up tent, sometimes it's hard to see, right? That the sunlight's one thing, but then even those colorized tents where the sun is coming through, certain colors don't show up on your computer screen as well. So one of the things we do is we just come in here and on the plot settings dialog, we can have our white or black based colors, and the software is just giving you an option of going in and just changing everything to a white based background on these that may stand out more, may stand out less, your call, right? I just changed it to the white ones, and it changes just a library of different settings to make it all work well. I'm going to go back in and change it to the dark ones and then apply. And so those are all tweaked. Now, one of the ones that I have trouble finding occasionally, and just using this as the power to show you what else you can do, is if you come into that same dialog box, oops, yep, there we go. And the cursor right now is white. That white, sometimes if I've got these grids being fairly light colored, sometimes I don't find the cursor as fast as I'd like to. So you can come in and just by clicking on just the one color box, let's make it yellow, and click on that, and then OK. Now all of a sudden your cursor jumps out a little bit more at you. And that I have found to be pretty good sometimes when you are when you're kind of fighting visually seeing it. Maybe you've got a color blindness problem. You can do some things to individually change how these things pop out. Now, downside, upside, I don't know which. The cursor color, when I change it in this in the software, it not only changes the cursor, but it also changes these tag colors. Those tag colors are tied to the cursor. I think I even understand why. It's because it's where it's crossing. It's all good. Just so you understand that is the way it is. And when you change one, you change both. Okay, that is a pretty cool, neat little thing that you can do if your eyes don't work so well, or you're got a color blindness of a certain color that is popping up that you can't see. And then these shadows in the background for where segments are versus where the straightaways are. Maybe this is a little bit too gray for you. Maybe a little bit too much jumps out. If we go back in there, and you can see that our plot grid is that gray color, we can come in and we can maybe darken that up a little bit. We can pick a whole different color if you wanted to, but we can, by the slider bar, we can darken it up a little bit. Click on OK and apply, and you can see that you know, some of that has changed colors, right? Tweak along in there, grab them up, play in there, change some different things. You can tweak a lot of the different stuff here in the background. It's kind of fun and makes it more yours. When you do a user profile, it remembers all of the settings that you have done. Just like the channel order, just like what what channels you have open, what functions you have open. It also remembers the plot colors. So you can save, and I've done it a lot. I will maybe I'm working in the lounge of a trailer, and we are looking at it with a white background, and then I want to see that same exact thing. I save it twice. I save it once with the white background, and then I save another one with the exact same name and dark. So then if we're out on the hood of the car underneath the tent, we can have it be looked at in dark, but when you're inside the lounge, maybe projecting up onto a big TV, maybe the light colors stand out better. That's what the driver likes. So I save the same profile with a light and a dark. Maybe you would do the same thing with different cursors. The window is open for you to do it in many different ways, so keep that in mind. Okay. The last one I want to do that's canned here, I've been following along a little bit, but we'll get into some of those questions real quickly. I just want to do one more, but it's going to take a change of some data. I want to bring up this one just because I had to go way back to find this problem. This is a problem that isn't happening nearly as much anymore. I'm just going to get rid of some of these channels and just have a speed trace redo that. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the black. I kind of goofed it up. You can always reset things, right? Okay, here's a problem that you'll see sometimes on older data. Some of the ones that were more susceptible to it were the older solos, the original solos. You'd see this occasionally. Just a cool little trick, just something, 2 stages to this I thought I would show you as part of this. Is I'm gonna turn on several of these laps, right? This is off-road truck data, so it actually lends itself to what I'm gonna show you the second part of this, which is, the snap function and ways of aligning data a little bit better. You get things a little more out of a line in the off-road world, or when you pick wildly different lines on the track. So we'll do that. What I'm gonna do is I just lit up 3 laps. I turned them on. I'm going to come all the way over here to the edge, near the start-finish line. I put the cursor as close as I can. If I can't get it all the way up against, I'm just hitting the left arrow key until I'm at the start-finish line. Distance is now 0, so I am at the start-finish line. Now I'm going to zoom in this track has the start line's actually over here, and then this is the finish line. But nonetheless, it's where we were triggering our GPS-based lap timing. And if I zoom in like crazy here, you're going to see something that some of you may have seen in the past. There is, I'm even going to turn on another lap just so we can have even more. So the purple one is the first one I've got. It started here, went around the entire track, and ended here, right? By using per lap color, we can kind of see this. That one actually has a pretty good alignment where it turns into the orange lap. It was the next lap, right? Now the trouble is the orange one ends over here and starts the green lap. Look how those are not in a line. They're not lined up like you might think it ought to be. Okay, and we do not either, right? You rarely do you see this with current hardware, current firmware, and all the different things. This is a problem that's pretty much gone away. But if you're using some older stuff, maybe you'll see this a little bit occasionally. When you do, don't panic. With the software, RayStudio 2 Analysis does a great job of, even if your data logger, you had it in a bad spot, your GPS quality was poor. If I come down here and I turn on, there's a number of sats. Where's the positional accuracy? Is let's see. Oops, I must have missed it. Let me try it again. Positional accuracy. The positional accuracy here is as high as 2.5, right? That we would rarely ever see that. This is 2000 and maybe 9, maybe somewhere in there, 2008, 2009. Off-road truck covered with mud, and in a spot where you can't put them up on the roof because they get ripped off when you roll over. All of these different things, right? Which kind of made the perfect storm for poor GPS positional accuracy. And because of that, you get a little bit of what we were looking at there, where the start-finish line doesn't align well. Here's the trick. Here's the trick that works every time, and it just cleans this stuff up real quickly. If you see this, just immediately, even though you got lap times while you were out there, go into your lap manager and do a GPS lap insert. I'm going to do it right now real quickly. There's videos out there about the GPS lap insert function, but to show you how to do it. But I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to use the start finish line. Crandon, Wisconsin is where this data was from. Confirm the selection. It's going to come up and say, do you want to continue? Yes. There's my new lap times, which are going to be built. They're very, very close to the old lap times, obviously, because I'm just tweaking them. And confirm. The lap times have now been successfully calculated. I'm going to turn on a bunch of laps again, same basic laps. Put the cursor all the way over here so we can see it nice and clean. Pull this up. Oops, I moved. And bring this up here. And now I'll get the cursor a little bit out of the way. Look at how nicely aligned the beginning of the lap now is. The GPS lap insert function, if you ever have trouble with some problems on especially the GPS 05 and older antennas, the software does a really, really good job of bringing those in and align them very well if you run into that. You don't see that very often, but especially nowadays, but if you do, that is a really quick little fix of cleaning that up. And the last thing I want to talk about here is, oops, let's jump back in here. I do want to show one here since I'm in here. This one, a lot of people don't know about this one. I think I mentioned it in one other previous webinar. When you're in the GPS map, and let's turn off per lap color, there's our speed trace, right? We've got it set up to show our GPS speeds. Some people will try to come in and they want to change the scaling of where does it turn, slow being blue and fast being red. And they want to come in and they want to change that. They may come over here and turn it onto bands, and then you can kind of come in here and start to change it. I have found that that's a little bit buggy by coming in and changing this. It doesn't always hold true, and but that's number one. But number two, it even takes a good chunk of time, right? I'm going to exit out. A lot of people don't realize that this little slider bar right here, if you're looking at this GPS map, and if I just come up, push and hold the top one down, look how I can change that and make the red be now only 68, 63 and above mile per hour is red. If I want to make the lower speeds be a little bit bigger, I can drag that up. You can change that scaling really quickly with this little bar right here on this side, and just grab it and bring this up, maybe bring this up a little bit, and very quickly adjust everything. A cool little tool. Let's take it one more level. Let's say you got it where you got lap 5 here and you got it active. A lot of people don't realize is if you hover over that upper button, auto scale, it's virtually the same as coming over here and double clicking on the speed trace here. Is by clicking on this, it just did a best fit from the fastest lowest point was the blue and the highest speed on that lap being the red, and it does a best fit. That little auto fit button right up there is something a lot of people don't know about, that auto scale, and that will quickly scale that top to bottom on the particular channel you have selected. Pretty cool little tool. Okay, the last thing I wanted to do, and this one, and I'm right at 11, so I'll just briefly show it. If you got a couple of laps, 3 laps, and you're over here, and off-road, you get this a lot. Let's come over here, coming off of this corner maybe. Maybe you're trying to get, let's turn off that positional accuracy. You're trying to adjust. You see over here, these X's are not on top of each other. It's all because of rollout distance. Race Studio 3 Beta is taking care of this little problem with the super stretch, the technology that we built into that. But if you come in here and we can look at this, and the GPS coordinate tells us that we're at 3 different spots. And we're trying to understand exactly what happened here, maybe coming off this corner right here, right? When did the driver get onto the, let me bring up throttle, and maybe just give us a real world example. I think there it is, throttle. When did the driver get to full throttle coming off that corner, right? So let's, if you go to the snap function, boom, and now you're sitting down here, you've got 3 different bars down here, and we're trying to get to where did the driver, this is a jump right here. Let's see, did the driver keep the throttle floored all the way up to the jump? Did he get off and on the throttle a little bit too early, too late? What you got to do is just align. Once you put the snap off, you can grab individual chunks of data and you can align the GPS X's over here in the map. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on both of these to make it a little bit more accurate to do what I'm doing. Let's go back to per lap color so we can really see it. And then take these and move them until all those X's are right on top of each other. I'm just dragging the bottom bar back and forth. I now have aligned this X, the GPS positional location, by just dragging one of the individual bars. Again, Race Studio 3 Beta has got this problem fixed for you. We do a lot of this automatically. Emiliano set it up. Here is now the driver hitting a couple of jumps that are right here that we can't see because if we turn on some accelerometers we can probably see it. But here's the driver coming off the throttle and back up, and how accurate was he doing that and getting back to the throttle? Just a quick example of aligning something. But you align the X's, align them at the apex point, right? And see exactly when did the driver get on the throttle. If you're in karting, you're trying to, maybe when did you turn in, when did you free up your hands, any different ways of time. Visually, when you're trying to make sure you're at exactly the right same spot, it is fantastic to do the snap function and then align the X's in the GPS map. Now you know the cart, car, sprint car, motorcycle, whatever it happens to be, is right at the same exact spot. Now you can do look at the driver inputs or the gear shift or the, whatever it is, what was the oil pressure, what was the fuel pressure, whatever you're looking for, happened at exactly the same spot. Okay. Pretty cool little trick that that's what the snap versus GPS lap insert was a question I had. Those are the 2 places I use them in 2 different ways. Lap insert to fix the start finish line problems, or you had a different start finish line with two of your different buddies. You've used the track learning effect in the Micron 5 is pretty typical. Do the GPS lap insert, brings everybody on the same page, and then the snap function allows you to really fine tune when you zoom in and get everybody at exactly the same spot on the track. In this case, just 3 different laps, but you could do it with 3 different chunks of data as well. Okay, it's kind of what I wanted to show. I'm at my time limit, but can you smooth the TPS channel by Andy? Yes, you can smooth any channel, even math or regular channels. You smooth anything you wish. In the math channel dialog, would you explain the full scale and zero scale? You have that full scale, zero scale here. And all that is doing is it is a starting spot. It's the starting spot where it starts with the scaling here once you apply that math channel. So it has nothing to do with the math. It is only to do with how you are displaying the data. So in this particular case, I've got a delta of the transmission temperatures. We had a temperature in and out of the automatic transmission as 0 to 100, and it's going to fit in there somewhere, right? I could have done 0 to 25, and it's just the starting scaling. That's what the scaling is inside of math channels. Okay. When exporting the track map to Google Earth, sometimes I find it goes out of the track. Is there a way to correct this? Not right now. We have coordinates, and Google Earth has coordinates, and it comes in and they land on top of each other. Sometimes it is the GPS gathered data that might have a shift to it and a movement. Just as often, or very often, it is the Google Earth imagery that that has a bit of a shift to it. Tip of the day for that one, maybe someday we'll go into it deeper. When you open up Google Earth, there's a button in the top, look for it, it's historical imagery. Sometimes if you just go back one vintage back, a couple years back of a different aerial image of where you're laying your aim data on top of, your aim data will fit much better. And you will see by bringing up a track and just go through that aerial, that imagery of historical imagery that Google saves for you, and you'll see the track is moving all over. They're doing their best to best fit that imagery to the coordinate value as well. So that's one of the things you can do. What setting do you recommend to start recording on the logger? And when I want to kind of RPM, I have a starting line running Rallycross. On the Rallycross was one that I ran into this. This will be our last question. We'll move. We'll have to jump out of his. We're going to run late. I always in Rallycross, because you go out and you do a warm-up lap, and then you come up and you sit and you do a standing start. So if you have it triggered on any sort of a speed thing, you're going to hammer it, especially on your SmartyCam as well, data or SmartyCam. I do them both to go on just on RPM. So if the car is running, you're gathering video, you're gathering data, anything that has a standing start, you're going to have to get rid of that speed trigger, because you're going to end up missing the first little bit of the start, and that is such critical data. Look at how you're starting, what you did with your feet, and those kind of things. So definitely do the RPM and let the logger direct it in the SmartyCam. You'll have much better luck. Okay, I'm going to share back to the presentation and kind of start to close this out. Important that our next webinar is going to be something that you guys want to see, so I want to make sure we get that before everybody has to run out. This one, just like the rest of them, everybody's, we're currently at 109 videos up on our YouTube site. Every one of these gets up there within an hour, hour and a half, best I can do, as fast as I can get it. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with questions. Continue to look there, and there's tons of other ones. A lot of the stuff we just went over today is actually embedded into a lot of these older ones. We were just chatting about it today, per lap color or something. Well, I haven't rebuilt it or done it differently because these older videos are still extremely valid. Race Studio 2 hasn't changed. As we get into Race Studio 3 beta analysis, obviously we're going to start building a little bit more of these direct ones. So keep that in mind. Go visit. Lots and tons of good information there. Customer support, we're out there, man. The poor guys, our tech staff have just been going like crazy, just like everybody else. Such a compressed race schedule that just love everybody that you're able to get out there and continue on. But it is a compressed race season this season. So look for us out at the track. We're out there a lot right now. And if you don't see us there with one of our vans, give us a call. We're here to help you, right? And you have my email address there in just a moment. Let me know if there's anything I can help you with as well. The next webinar, Emiliano, who is here in the background, or was in the background, is mentioned when we first went with the public beta, a couple of months ago. He's the software engineer that heads the team that's doing this. He mentioned that about every month we're going to come back, and we promise we're going to come back in and talk about the bug fixes, any new enhancements that are coming, things like that. We're going to talk about it in our webinars. And a man true to his word, we're going to be here on Thursday. Emiliano is going to show us a new beta release that you all should go check. And tomorrow about this time, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later, if you open up your beta version, if you're participating, you're going to see that there's a new version. Go ahead and download that. And tons and tons of bug fixes, plus some new enhancements. And then we're going to talk about some new things and some of the bug fixes, and answer a bunch of your questions on Thursday, August 27th, with Emiliano, straight from Milan, Italy. We're going to be talking about the part 3 of our information on the beta software release. So look forward to having Emiliano here chatting with us again. Always such great information and fun to chat with him when he's doing that. So as we kind of close this up, here's my contact information. If I said something today that piqued a little bit of an interest to you, write me an email note. Happy to to clarify or add something to it. I did not get to as many questions as I thought I would. I was always a little concerned that the Q&A didn't work as well as it should. So and it's you guys are chatting a ton over there in the chat box, so it's hard to see while I'm still trying to talk. So keep that in mind. Give me a note, drop me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Looking forward to the next webinar with Emiliano on Thursday. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to all of our AIM support staff answering questions in the background. It's always a great help. Look forward to seeing you again on Thursday. Everybody have a great couple of days, and we'll see you on Thursday.